All right, welcome back. This is Brent Blanc, and this is the Substance Painter to Arnold tutorial part 2. So we've gone ahead and we've exported all the maps that we need. Our base color, our height, our roughness, and our vein map. And I did that for the 4 leaves that we textured inside of Painter. And now we're going to take them into Arnold and we'll start putting them together in here. So this table I've already done, and this pot I did in a different video. Actually, not in a different video, just different project. Maybe I'll do a video about it. But to get started, I had the settings turned up a little bit. I've already turned them down a little bit, but I'm going to continue to turn them down while we're working with it, just so that I can get a faster render. All right, that looks good. You can see once you turn down transmission or SSS, quite a different result. So, but a lot faster. Okay, first off, I think I mentioned in previous videos before, definitely use a layer system. That way you can pop between different shading networks easily, and it keeps everything together, so you don't have to worry about it getting too cluttered with too many shaders inside of here. How you make a new one is just a little plus up here. It'll give you this untitled version. You click that and you just name it whatever. So we'll do, all right, so to start out, I'll just make an Arnold standard surface. We'll be sure to, I usually don't clutter everything like this in the same window, but for the video, I'm just gonna do that so you can see everything easily. Usually I have a lot of stuff off on the other monitor, but anyway, so be sure to name everything nice and neat so that you can see exactly what it is from your material set. It's just a good idea to be descriptive with all your names so you know exactly what's going into what, so you don't have like this type of thing going on, aiStandard 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, and you have no idea what it's hooked up to. You have to like click it and then say select object, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, anyway. So, all right, so for the first one, I'm just gonna go to the perspective view so that I don't change my camera. All right. So these 3 leaves on the top is what we're gonna be dealing with because the process is the same for the other ones. So first, now that we have this set up, I'm gonna select these 3 top leaves and just assign that material. Assign, so I just right clicked on this material node, right click, assign material to viewport selection. It's assigned to those. So let's go back to our perspective. Oh, it's actually render cam. Let's run that. Turn off isolate select. Okay, so now it's just white. And that's exactly what we were expecting. Move my attribute editor into this block here. So let's click on here, run that again, and I'm going to isolate select. I'm just going to lock the render isolate to this material. You can see my displacement's actually still showing up here. And the reason is because we need to update full scene. It doesn't really allow you to do like IPR. You kind of have to reset the whole scene to be able to update your displacement properly. So it's a good thing to remember if your displacement's not giving you the right values or whatever. Okay. So let's go in here and add our first map. So AI image, and we'll just call this tutorial leaf base color. Okay, so now we've made this base color node. Now we need to hook this up. So just so I don't have to check in Painter what it was, you just need to find out whatever that UDIM number this was, just so we can hook it up. Let's see, so it's 1011. All right, so we can go over to tutorial leaf, go here, so 1011 base color. And you will not have a .tx yet because you haven't converted it. It'll be .tiff. It'll automatically convert it to tx whenever you render it the first time. If you don't have a tx made, it'll just take a little bit longer to render the first time, and then it'll create a tx, and then you're good to go. All right, so now we have the base color hooked up. Let's go down the line and do the other ones. And you have to check your color space settings to make sure that everything's good. I don't understand all this super well, just kind of barely. So just make sure your color management is set correctly. If your images are looking really dark or weird, there's probably something going on. So I have the rendering space set here, and my view transform is just sRGB curve. I think this will usually be set by your studio, and usually you won't have to worry about this. I don't know, this stuff really confuses me. Smarter people than me help set this up. So yeah, it should be set up, and somebody at your studio will tell you like how to work. Or if you're doing this at home, there's a lot of tutorials about it, but it still confuses me. The more I find out about it, the less I understand. So good luck with that. But anyway, so this is looking like it's supposed to, like it did in my actual map. So if I look over here, the color is the same. So that looks good. All right, so let's make our next map. And for this one, let's load our roughness. And this one was linear. So I'm going to set the color space to raw, and I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, and I'm going to make an AI range, just because I tend to push this around inside render instead of going back into Painter. I mean, sometimes you just need to go back to change the value, but I like to just mess with it in here a little bit. All right, so let's hook up this range to specular roughness. Let's name this. All right, so, and that is raw. We have a piped in. Okay, great. So let's make the next one. So I'll make another image. And for this one, we want to get the height. Tutorial leaf height. And I'm just going to make another AI range. Okay, so then I'm going to make another image. AI image. And this one is going to be our vein map that we made. And then the final one is going to be that special subsurface malt that I made. So we want to hook our height into a displacement shader. And we'll take this out channel from this displacement shader and put it into the displacement shader of our tutorial leaf shading group. And then we can just delete this one. And we will call this tutorial leaf displacement. All right, well, I just had a crash, so I'm just going to quickly recreate everything I just did. And then I'm going to take the out of the displacement shader and put it into my tutorial leaf SG shading group. Just delete this one. Then I'm going to make a color correct just in case I use it for my color. So let me just hook these up. So I'm going to take my, let me name this. Take my out color, put it into base color. And also because I'm going to be using transmittance for this, I'm going to duplicate this color. See, because I want to use that same color to drive my subsurface color so that I can like push it around. I have my regular base color into base color, my subsurface scattering into the subsurface color. And then let me just hook up my roughness into, and I set all these to raw, except for the color one. It's just sRGB because all these are linear. I want it to be uncurve corrected. So I'll take this roughness out color, put it into the input of the range, and then I'll just take the single red channel, put it into specular roughness. Because I had mentioned this in prior videos, but for those that didn't see those, these red dots or red wires means that it's a triple or a RGB value, and the green ones are scalar, which is just 0 to 1, just a single channel, 0 black to white. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you see all these green and red nodes, that's what that means. So I just hit 1 to collapse that. Then I'll take my SS malt, put it into that range, and then I'll take the red channel, and this is going to go into subsurface amount. And right now I'm not modifying any of them. I'm just getting them all hooked up so we can render it the first time. Okay, so now for this height, let's hook up leaf vein into the displacement first. Because I think for this one, I ended up just using bump because I didn't want the leaf to interpenetrate itself too much. So if you do AI bump 2D, then we will take color, put in the input 1, bump map, my out value, normal camera. And we might mix this height and this vein range together. I can't remember if I did or not. Get everything hooked up for the very first render. All right. I think I already hooked these up, but I'm just going to make sure. Assign material. And I'll briefly show you what my lighting setup is, but I really wanted to do a whole video that kind of explains some of the lighting that I did. Not for this one specifically, but for lighting in general. So I'll just quickly show you. So I've got an HDR in here, and then I have a light over here that's kind of doing most of the subsurface. And then I have this backlight here. I think it's just backlighting these leaves. And then I think this one was for kind of doing like a speck hit on there. And I can isolate all those lights and show you what they're doing individually. And then this is just like a backdrop. Pretty simple. And then this light down here is lighting the backdrop. So I'll go more over lights in general in a different video. So what you want to do is go up to View, Camera Settings, Resolution Gate, and that'll show you where the framing of the camera is. Then go to Overscan, and that'll allow you to scale the window, and it'll lock your aspect ratio so it doesn't cut off anything. So you always know what your camera's doing. So I usually have that on. And you can also go to select the camera, attributes, display, and down here you can increase the opacity of the gate cutoff, and you can change the color. Okay, so we have that. Let's do our first render. For you, the very first render, it's going to take a minute to convert all of your TIFF or whatever file type you're using to TX, because Arnold reads TX files. I think it has something to do with its like internal mapping system or something. I think RenderMan uses TX too. I don't really know why that is, but that's just the way it is. All right, so you can see right away, this is the displacement of that vein, like shooting that up really far, which we obviously don't want, but it's rendering the first time. So one thing when you're first starting your scene, if you're using displacement, you actually have to select the objects. I had already done it previously, but the objects that you're going to have displacement on them, you need to activate its subdivisions. So you select on the object, go to the attribute editor, and then you'll go to the shape node. So this is the transform node, and then this is your shape node, which will say mesh. You'll go down to the Arnold tab. And for objects that are not opaque, you uncheck them. I think they start opaque. I'm not sure if you flag this for transmitting objects or not. Go to subdivisions, turn on Cat Clark, and then do like 2 or 3 iterations here. Go to your displacement attributes, and you can set the intensity of the bump map here, and its bounds and its scalar value. And you can do auto bump. I don't do bump because I do that myself separately. So I have these, in a previous video I had mentioned as well, one thing that you can't do, select a bunch of objects all at the same time, and then go in and change them all at the same time. It'll only select I think it's the last one you selected, is the only one that'll get updated. So what you want to do is you can make a little script. So down here in the in your script editor, so anytime you're performing an action, it actually shows up in the script editor, and you can copy those actions and put them into your own scripts. So you can see here, save script, or you can save it to shelf. That's here. Okay. So you can take that, put it down here. So now that script is actually going to do that. It's going to select that. So if I select this script, select /r leaf 06, I'll hit enter on the numpad. and it just performed that action. You can do a lot of scripting stuff without actually any scripting knowledge, like just clicking stuff, see what it does. It's like selecting this light, or if I was gonna change the intensity, see over here, it's updating all of that. Say I want to change the spread to this. So let's say I want to set it back to 2. So watch over here. I'm going to hit enter on the numpad, set it to 2. All right, so anyway, simple example of how that works. What I did is I did that same thing, but for the displacement height. So what this does right here is it changes all the objects that I have selected to a displacement height value of 0.05. So 0.05, you see that? So right now it's at 0.15. So I'm going to select those 3 objects, and then I'm going to select this displacement height, which is just going to run this command. So it's set that to 0.05. And if I go and look at the other ones, they're all set to 0.05 now. And then I did the same thing for subdivisions. So what this does is it sets the subdivision type to Cat Clark, which is 1, because 0 is off. 0 is none, 1 is Cat Clark, 2 is linear. So it's set to 1, which is going to set them all to Cat Clark, and my subdivision iteration is going to set them to 2. So I'm going to select all these, and then hit that, which is just going to run that script. Now all of them are set to 2. You can see that, and they're all set to Cat Clark. So that's the way you can run a bunch of commands on a bunch of objects all at the same time. So I have everything, all those leaves have their subdivisions set properly. Let me run this again. Okay, so let's get started on getting these working properly. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to set our subsurface type. So I'm going to set it to random walk. And now we can start messing with the weight and the radius as well. Run this IPR. I'm going to select just the leaves. I'm going to lock. It's isolated selected just this material. So now it's anything that has this material attached to it, it's just going to render those. And then I'd hit this little lock button so that I can click around to different things and it'll continue to render just that area. Another thing I'm going to do, a render region, just so I can render a small portion, just so it's faster. So this SS malt, let's start messing with that. And let me try to mess with this this height. Set this to 1. So what that did is it took that height map that we made in Substance Painter, and it's just applying a bump signal to it. Objects that are very thin, you have to be really mindful about displacement because it can cut through them really easily. So for this, and since it's like such a small object, it's going to be perfect for this scenario, and we can just do a little bit of displacement if we need it, but I'm not really even sure we need it. Start messing with this radius. First, I'm just going to make it like red or something. I think my mult is too low, so I should just turn them all off completely. Okay, what this will do is everything that's white is completely unmalted. Everything that is black, it's malted down. Mess with this radius a little bit. Set to 0. We probably want to do. Just turn on smooth step on there. I think that's like a linear, slower range curve. I don't know how that works. Let's take this to like 5. I'll take that down a little bit. 0.3. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the resolution. Because right now all we're doing is working on just getting the transmittance to work. So I'm not really, I just want fast turnaround. All right, so let's change this radius color. All right, so now that I've got it in here, I think that it's a little bit too, it's rendering a little bright. I'm going to gamma down that leaf. I'm also going to take down the specular value a bit. You just hold control and then left click and drag over top of the value box. It'll make you a little slider. And if you want to, what you can do is you can view your channels by themselves. So the way that I have this set up here, I've got diffuse albedo, direct, specular direct, specular indirect, SSS direct, and indirect. So, and then the beauty. So how you turn these on is you go into your render settings, go into AOVs, and in your available AOVs over here, this will be blank. Go down here and I'm gonna add albedo, direct, indirect. I'll add specular. Direct. This one would be the specular value flat. These will be lit versions. SSS direct and indirect, and that should be good. And at no additional cost to you, you'll get them over here. It's just a way so you can debug what each channel is doing a little more precisely. And also, if you go up to Window, Toolbar Icons, Debug Shading. Mine is already on, so it's here. Shading. So this is regular shading. Then you can get a basic version, which will show you like bump and displacement. Or maybe just displacement, I can't remember. And then a flat lit version, or it's just like a white material and everything and it's lit. Occlusion, wireframe, normal, UV, primitive ID, object ID, and I'm not really sure what that one does. All right, let's go to shading. All right, so it looks like my backscatter is still a little too intense. I think the scale maybe. I'll just go ahead and point out that if it wasn't already obvious, these are not always, quote, best practices. These are just like ways that I've done it to get it to work. So, and I'm constantly reevaluating the way that I do things and will change the way that I do it if I find a method that's better or more efficient. Don't take this as like, this is the only way to do it. This is just the way that I do it. Starting to get that leaf to work. And now I'm going to go through and click each one of my lights in isolation, just so you can see how that is working. And I'm going to go up to my Arnold Utilities Light Manager. What this does is it like pulls up a little menu of all the lights that are in your scene, and you can select them by clicking them over here. You can change the color, the intensity, exposure, the samples, and then you can just turn them on and off here. I use intensity as basically an on-off switch, kind of the same that I do with these enable. I only use exposure to change the intensity of the light, or I guess the exposure of the light, and then intensity, I just leave it alone unless I'm going to mult it down by some factor for whatever reason. And then, yeah, you can just be over here and you can click this. So so I have isolate select on now. I'm going to select the sky dome. All right, so now I have the sky dome selected. It's rendering just the sky dome in the isolate selection. Then I'll select just this area light. So this area light is kind of behind. It's causing just a little bit of the subsurface, and it's just hitting a little bit of rim on the clay pot. And then I've got this area light that pretty much the only thing that it's doing is just giving you a speck hit. Just because before, like if I turn off isolate select, and I turn off this light, over here is just a little bit flat. So I just added that little speck hit to just give it a little volume. And then this light is that's the one that I showed you at the beginning that's pointing to the backdrop. And that's just to give this backdrop a little hit of color. And then this light here is my light that I have over here that's kind of pushing the transmittance intensity so that this sky dome is not doing all the work. Didn't really get as much intensity as I wanted. Now that I'm seeing it, I'm going to look at this leaf. intensity of the bump is not high enough. That actually bothered me in my previous render, but I had never fixed it. So we can do that now. All right, so leaf Swiss mid up to 0.7. Something about that value is wrong. Let me see. All right, now I get a range in there. What I really want to do is separate that vein from the leaf frequency, because I can't independently move them, because I wanted to increase the intensity of the leaf bump, but then this vein is like fighting me. So I probably want to separate those. So let's just bring down the bump intensity of this. What we could do is, let me try this. Procedural hack. I'm gonna take an AI noise. Let's add an add node. Add the height. The height in this noise. I'm just gonna make an AI range for this, so I don't mess up the initial conditions. Distortion. Really trying to lower the intensity of that vein. So what it's doing is it's just adding these two signals together. This is the added signal, so you can see the vein is here. This is what it looks like without it. So I'm just trying to push that value so that the bump goes up a bit in those areas where the vein is not. So let's turn up the bump value to something like, so now what's going to start to happen is we can knock down that vein intensity. That's about where I want the vein intensity. And I can start pushing. I just want that frequency of that leaf to be a little more irregular. And I'll just let this resolve. All right, guys, and that is it for this part 2. So please like and subscribe and comment below, and I will see you in the next one.